So first of all, I just want to bring to everybody's attention, if you don't know Margaret Kidd, you haven't been watching the news lately. Right? Margaret Kidd is probably the most interviewed person, I kid you not, in the last 30 days. Now, she's going to be humble and shy about it, but she's been on every single broadcasting level, I think, NPR, CNBC, interviewed by some of the top people. BBC, right? So, awesome. I think it's great. She is definitely the proponent of the knowledge and shares everything about what's going on here at the Port of Houston, in the industry, and globally what's going on. And I respect her opinion 100% because it's always right on when she speaks to the media, which I know is difficult for almost anybody to do, and she does it very well. So with that, Margaret and she very much got involved with us over a year ago in helping us out because we usually have a regular golf tournament with Redeem. The one will be March 7th here. And Margaret didn't ask for anything. She just wanted to come and help, bring students and help. And it was such a great thing that you stepped up in that way. And I'm so grateful and I'm so honored that you're here with this wonderful panel today. And I'll let you get started so I don't overlook the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. What Tim failed to say was that he provided us an opportunity to show our students that it's not just a degree, it's what you do with community, how you give back, and how you become a good corporate citizen out there for your community. So my name is Margaret Kidd. I am the program director for supply chain and logistics technology at University of Houston. That means I'm full-time faculty. And today, what we want to address is something I've heard almost every panel bring up, and that is the lack of qualified workers, the shortage of workers retiring. So what we do as a program is we very much train that next generation of workers and work with industry and government to drive regional prosperity and economic development. I'm going to pass the mic and allow each of our panelists to introduce themselves, give a short preview, and then we'll start with a few questions. Everyone on the panel today is connected to my program, either in the format of a full-time faculty or on our advisory board or an industry partner of sorts. So let's get started.
Hello, I'm Al Henson. I'm also faculty at the University of Houston, working with Margaret. And I am a professor who is delighted to be able to work with Margaret. So I am, actually my background is not in supply chain logistics, and I'm sure that goes along with a lot of people from where you started. But I actually come from the industries of architecture, planning, and construction. Now, how did I get here? Well, through technology. So I've been a professor for a while. I've taught in the A&M system. I taught at Texas Southern University. And now it feels good to be back teaching again, working with Margaret at University of Houston. Through the years, I've also practiced as an entrepreneur. I've also had the opportunity to actually, I heard the gentleman earlier speak about the West Indies down in Trinidad. Even before getting into the industry, one of the things I got to do as a contractor was try to sell lightweight gauge steel down to the nonprofits for building housing. So not knowing what I was doing, I was just trying to compensate for what was going on in America, the housing crisis, right? So I was like, okay, I need to figure out a way to feed my kids. So I went down and I tried to get a whole PowerPoint selling the light gauge steel. Hey, you need it for the termites. You're in the hurricane valley, you're right in the path of hurricanes. And did not get it, but it was fun going through the process of saying, hey, I bring the labor from Mexico. I'd ship it to Trinidad. I would figure out ways, but it didn't sell. But what was funny, about 5 years later, they're using light gauge steel. So maybe I didn't take the right approach. So I didn't get it, but at least they're utilizing the material down there. So going forward, that was part of my entrepreneurial part, teaching entrepreneurship. In my doctoral studies, I picked up GIS, also in my master's working in planning. And GIS was a tool that I saw as being something that would be revolutionary. Even more so for teaching kids about data and analytics and locational intelligence. So picking that up, I took that to and worked with the city of Houston and actually was able to build a division, a section for GIS for the Housing and Community Development Department. So now, going forward, I am now focused on bringing not only GIS technology, but figuring out how I can work with other technologies, and that's my show.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me here. I appreciate it. My name is Vincent Witt. I work for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. I've been there about 10 years or so, doing a variety of things there. Started off on the factory floor, working on test scripts and working with hyperscale customers, Apple, Facebook, all the big names in big tech. Worked my way up into various different positions, and then eventually moved over to the service organization within HPE. At the time it was HP. But so what I do there now is I'm the global contracts manager for the supply chain for the services business. So we deal with anything that's post-sale to the customer. So that's any products, any services that we need to deliver to the customer after they bought their initial product from the regular sales side of the house. And basically, it's my responsibility to make sure our procurement team is trained, first of all, in what our contracts say and what they mean and what we're expected to get out of them and our suppliers. And otherwise, help them learn how to negotiate, how to deal with crisis management, for example, the pandemic, and deal with those situations with our suppliers to make sure we get what we need to our customers. Before that, I was with Johnson Space Center with NASA for about 15, 16 years. And I didn't find out that until I went to HP that was also a supply chain job. Specifically, when I left there, I was the program chief engineer for the spacesuit program. And our job was to make sure that all of the different contractors that partake in developing the suit or building the suit, making sure that the astronauts were trained, anything about it. All of that happened on time, on schedule, in budget, for the project schedule, all the usual things you'd expect. And then I decided to do something different because I worked myself out of a job there. But that's me.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Marco Poisler. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Tim. What a fantastic group of people here that I've met so far in this amazing place in the Woodlands. I just, a little back of my day job, I am the Chief Operating Officer for UTC Overseas, a global project and transportation logistics company, headquartered here with 46 offices in 26 countries. That's my day job. But one of the things I've been doing for just about 2 years now, I am an adjunct professor at the University of Houston. This semester I'm teaching project logistics, which focuses on capital projects. And we've talked a lot about this morning, some of the panels about the great resignation and giving back. I mean, for me personally, I'm born and raised in Jersey City, New Jersey, outside of New York. And I did study economics at Georgetown. And I had a job at the World Trade Center. That was my first job, full-time job, big German global transportation company. And head was yelled at by Europeans and Germans on the job training, really good training, and learned a lot. But I struggled to find training. I found a good part of it at SUNY Maritime, related to maritime and logistics up in the New York area. And developing the curriculum, working with Margaret on a project logistics course, I found a lot of the material over the years I've collected in my library, colleagues have given it, and as well, the World Trade Institute, the World Trade Center where I worked on the 50th floor used to have what would be adjunct professors, people in the business, giving out certificates and training certificates in chartering, insurance, and export specialists, import specialists. I'm really excited that Margaret has taken that program and taken a lot of these certifications. At the end of the day, what I like to do, what people did to me, is made me employable. And that's what I'm excited to do as a businessman. I look at these students and try every day to teach them something that makes them employable. And I'm great that UH has got the fantastic logistics program to do that.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me on this great discussion and panel discussions. And by the way, how many of you here have not heard any about autonomous driving? None, right? Only one. But anyway, that's exactly what I'm doing. By the way, I'm Dr. Matthew Hu, that I am here to kind of share with you that I am working with my team, provide the total solutions by integrating the electrifications, intelligence, and shared mobility technologies to provide the top-notch of mobility services for the urban public transportation and make the kind of the choices of public choice. That's exactly what I'm doing. And my passion has been in the industrial engineering and also the quality. That I've been working with this automotive business. For example, it's a Ford Motor Company, helping the company to build the engine, to build the engine that got award from this SAE award, and also working with the technologies, and also working with this technologies Hewlett Packard, and also the oil and gas business and consulting business. And I have a passion about the pay it forward, especially for the pandemic kind of challenges, slow down the whole business. I've been thinking a long time. What can I do? What am I doing to help the organization, especially the community? I'm glad to find an opportunity that university use it. That kind of great opportunity school that helped me to kind of fulfill that kind of mission where I can able to learn and work with the student. And I've been passionate, found and interested in the industrials that talk about the supply chain and engineering quality. And most of business are very in kind of a reactive motion, meaning what they're fighting is creating kind of heroes. That's good, but not enough. And we sat back and what can we do to help? And that's kind of things I'm sharing with my students, especially through the technologies of this using because of technology to share with the student. And also I've been the part-time adjunct professor and learning, helping organization, working with the markets on this one and see what can we do, how can we do to improve the quality of students with, and they prepare for the good workforce for the market, especially before they coming out of the school, what can we help so that we can equip with them that kind of knowledge and top-notch of that kind of best practices, for example, say problem solving. You name it, talk about all the excellencies, but really the bottom line is how can we be able to help us out if we even don't improve myself working with my team to focus on this customers and driving the values and focus on the kind of health and also the safety and readjust the knowledge gaps. And that's exactly what I've been doing and being passionate. And this is a fantastic opportunity. And I welcome your question that you may have for me in the sense of how can I address those technology issues. In the meantime, how can I take the time to share with my students and also with my communities and the community of society and manufacturing engineering to work with them to enhance myself, certainly learning each other. With that, thank you.
So we all know who Charles Darwin is, right?
Yes.
So one of the things that Charles Darwin said was that survival of the species is based on adaptation and collaboration. And a valuable lesson learned during COVID is companies that thrived were collaborating and they were pivoting to a new normal. With that said, we face those same challenges in the classroom, working with students. So I want to start with Dr. Henson. And what he failed to tell you also is that we were in a doctoral program together. He was my one friend. I actually had more than one friend. So Dr. Henson, what type of things are you doing with students to prepare them for the future in the supply chain and logistics world?
One of the things, and I spoke to it earlier, was making them aware of locational intelligence. Introducing and integrating in the classroom what's called RGS Online for now. Plan to expand on that in the future, but taking the different factions of the industry, right? And trying to talk about the physical components. That's not necessarily at the ports or where the bulk is coming from other places, but to start spreading it into the landscape. So start looking at the physical features in the landscape. Another thing is we're preparing them to be the next generation of supply chain management, not the global. We want them to know about what's going on all across the world, not just what's going on in their immediate country in the Americas. Another thing, we want them to be a cost analyst. So to start looking at cost and time, especially as things like we're in the current state right now, where the customer's demand is the number one priority, right? That's what's driving the economy and keeps everybody economically happy. So that, along with how transportation impacts the different factors, is something that we want to make sure they have a comprehensive understanding with, help them connect the dots to some of the other things some of the professors are teaching, and trying to make sure we're completely integrated in the curriculum where we actually connect with what the other staff is teaching to ensure that they have that comprehensive understanding.
Dr. Henson, because you and I are coming from an urban planning and transportation background, can you help the audience understand what we're doing to ensure students understand the spatial layout of logistics?
All right. And of course, thank you for that question. Of course, in the industry, we can talk about distribution centers, where things are being manufactured, where they're coming from. But what we're doing is taking them more into the urban landscape as it relates to what's happening in the census tracts. Who are the populations where the transportation lines are going through? Are there opportunities looking forward in the future for some of the things that can be done based on some of today's problem? How can we start producing economic development for the populations where you have all of this bulk passing, all the transportation pieces going up and down these roads through some of the areas where people need jobs, right? These may be new terminals in the future, looking at things longitudinally, of course, looking at where we come from in the industry, but where are we going, right? And also making sure we look at these populations and how we can actually integrate some economic development for the populations in the urban landscape.
Dr. Henson, that's great. Could you explain to the audience, what you and I have collaborated on recently in regards to food insecurity, which is alive and well in America. Over 38 million people face food insecurity. Approximately 500,000 in the Houston region face food insecurity. And then secondly, the work we were doing in Vietnam related to Nike.
Right, so that is my latest research agenda, is looking at the food insecurity component as it relates to the food supply chain. But some of the work that we've done is looking at the food deserts and where those actually exist. We started in Houston, looking at where those are, looking at where there's low income and low accessibility to quality foods, right? Food that people can thrive on. Because in some neighborhoods, in some of these food deserts, people are getting diseases such as, what's one of them? Brain fart. diabetes. Diabetes and some other things because there's a lack of quality food, right? Good food, fresh food. And their access to it is up to 2 miles sometimes that they have to get to. And some of these populations do not have access to transportation. So that's kind of what we're diving into. And we're also diving into the students actually doing action planning, actually going to warehouses to help nonprofits distribute food and looking at their organization to see how they can use logistics to help them with the distribution of food and organizing their warehouses for quicker and better production to get supplies in and get them out. Also, the other piece was what we're doing is looking at Vietnam, where we looked at Vietnam as it relates to Nike. There was a situation where during COVID, where the laborers did not necessarily get back to work in time. There was a lack of laborers. So figuring out what those logistics are as it relates to getting production going again for Nike and looking at those numbers in Vietnam as it relates to Nike.
Let me just tag on to that. What we uncovered was when we mapped all of Nike's manufacturing in Vietnam and China, and we'll just talk about Vietnam, the bulk of it was in the vicinity of Ho Chi Minh City. Ho Chi Minh City was closed down in the middle of July and opened up a little bit 1st of October. We think we're having labor shortages. We've seen nothing like what they're facing. So we were really trying to scale what was occurring there. Let's move on to Vince. COVID has certainly put supply chain, logistics, ports, ships into the news, everyday language. But in the terms of procurement, we all kind of understand what it is now. So Vince, tell us, how does technology impact procurement deals or contracts?
Thanks. Hold before I answer that one, or try to answer it. I'd go back to this previous question about what you're talking about, teaching students. And I'd say I wish there were people in the industry already had the awareness, what do you call it, vocational awareness, intelligence. I don't think the people that are there today really haven't fully captured either. So I think it's a good thing that, like in the past, people talk about emotional intelligence, right? I think this is a very similar topic that eventually get into the workforce, something would be very helpful to supply chain knowledge.
We agree. That's why every student that graduates in a year will know how to use GIS. It may take 2 years to make sure they all do, but they will be graduating with that.
So to move on to your other question, I do have some notes. You guys have seen me read that, but it's really a matter of just so I don't forget some things. But I usually talk in specifics since I am an attorney as well. I don't like to be too vague unless I have to. But from the deals and contracts that we deal with on a semi-regular basis, we've noticed that a lot of our third-party logistics carriers and our own internal systems, whether it be as a distribution centers or out at our forward stocking locations or wherever it is, right? One of the drivers that we run into from a technology perspective is that we do not have interfacing systems. Everybody has their own system, right? Everybody, whether it's homegrown or bought off the shelf or whatever. And I heard a previous panelist talk about using Domo for maybe some stuff. I wasn't sure if that was internal or across companies, but at least from some of our experiences, we've noticed that because we do not have common systems, there's a lot of extra human touch involved. And because you don't have these interfaces established, what it does is it drives very specific changes to the language in contracts and when things get handed over, what the liability is at those handovers, et cetera. So what we try to do is eliminate as much of that human touch as we can, try to automate as much as we can. And when we do that, so long as we drafted things clearly, the procurement agreement works out and everybody usually gets what they want, or at least within reason, right? It's all a balancing act. But so really the solution from a technology perspective we look for is try to have something that's harmonious, but not necessarily homogeneous, and move towards automation as much as we can, and eliminate as much of that human touch that we can, because that human touch drives up costs. You talked about earlier, trying to teach people to learn about costs and analysis. If we can reduce that human touch, you can reduce costs. Labor is very expensive, as we all know. But when we do that, we shift automation or shift to something similar to that, what we can also do is try to deal with shifting liabilities. And we all care about that because, again, liabilities drive costs. So that's our goal, and one of the biggest things we see from a technology perspective in our agreements.
Thank you. Marco, Houston is gateway in the Americas for the project cargo sector and for the EPC market. How does technology impact the global delivery of construction logistics and capital projects?
Let me preface that question that I've worked around the world. I've been to 82 countries and or touch on what I also touching in the class. Let me start with customs here in the United States. If you look at customs clearance and the challenges with customs clearance enforcement, something that we monitor a lot in terms of not only the supply chain and what is the proper duty classification. One of the challenges, if you're familiar with invasive species, there's a treaty, the International Phytosanitary Treaty from 1947 on wood packaging material, ISPM 15, that has been severely enforced the past 2 years with dramatic consequences in terms of ships. What that's meant in terms of the cargo is found with some sort of invasive species here, it needs to go possibly with an immediate export. And typically that's gone off to Mexico. The entire ship has to be fumigated before it comes in. So the planning involved to make sure that the proper wood packaging material, and this is universal in handling projects around the world, the member countries in this treaty from 1947 has an impact because they all need to follow. Some countries enforce it, some don't. The United States, because of the lobbying efforts of the agricultural communities, we've seen and witnessed tremendous enforcement of that. What we are seeing now also in terms of customs clearance, I'm just giving an example here in the Americas to Margaret's question, but this is replicated in the global projects that we do around the world. If we look at the fantastic panel that touched on human trafficking, the Biden administration has made it clear that forced labor will be watched on enforcement. And that will have implications for the global supply chain. And now U.S. Customs will be an arm of enforcement on this important issue. I'm a shipping guy, and I'm helping people move cargo from point A to B, and I watch these every day from an enforcement point of view. The other part of the challenge that we've seen here, global chartering. If everyone on the news, and Margaret covered it very exceptionally well on BBC and NPR, on the containers sitting outside California, that's very well clear right now. Bloomberg, by the way, another pitch for a supply chain program. Bloomberg said, forget an MBA in finance, get an MBA in supply chain. It was one of the important articles in Bloomberg magazine. The shifts in our capital projects that we've seen, and that's impacted steel projects that we're working on, cement projects, all these capital infrastructure projects don't have the price level in delivering those capital projects that they had budgeted 2 years ago. Because when you plan a capital project, you're looking at 5 years of a delivery schedule, because it's more profitable for a heavy lift crane ship with beautiful 1,000-ton cranes on there to move containers. So that the container market has sucked in all of these heavy lift ships, or made it a price point that's more attractive for a heavy lift ship to go. That there's consequences to that. And also from a capital investment, since there's also supply and demand complexity here going in terms of the type of ship. Ships are also consumers of fuel, and for ship owners to know where to invest in terms of the type of ship, right now, heavy fuel is obviously not in fashion anymore. We're talking about different types of green. We were talking about IMO 2020 2 years ago with that, about the ramp up of low sulfur fuel. But ammonia seems to be the type of fuel that the future may see in terms for ships, since it's cleaner. But there are no refineries, and where are you going to get it? It's a lot more expensive. So there's a lot of unknown for ships and shipping about where it's going. And of course, the investment doesn't know where to follow.
Thank you, Marco. This leads nicely into a question for Dr. Hugh. Intelligent and autonomous infrastructure is among the highest priorities for stimulating economic growth and economic development. Texas, yes, Texas, our state has picked up over 100 companies that have relocated from California during COVID. So what does that mean? They need infrastructure, right? Highways, rail, ports. But we need to be looking at the next generation. Dr. Hugh, what does your team do to prepare for better mobility using technology?
Thank you for the question. I've heard today's morning discussion about the autonomous driving vehicles, a lot of testing point by point. Those things are necessary, and yet when you talk about the totally kind of full capability, implementing, making much more efficiency overall, so really have the kind of system that provide kind of flexibility, high efficiency at the lowest possible costs to make things movement. And talking about the infrastructure, that's absolutely very important, because when I'm talking about the total solutions, the infrastructures are very important for us to connect those autonomous driving vehicles. For example, you're talking about the 5G network, and you're talking about the infrastructures of the road, smart road conditions, and also the whole thing connect each other, and also the combined with the kind of autonomous driving vehicles. That's how can we be able to provide those kind of the total solutions and make it much more effective. I have been challenged when I was having a sharing a couple months ago. They say, you have been able to provide those smart, intelligent vehicles, especially these days. When I talk about the OEM, talk about the OEM, they all moving the trends to the electrification and the autonomous driving vehicles. And then all people say that that's good enough, but that's good for the technology's advancement and going forward for people's kind of movement from the business standpoint to the personalized vehicles. But not until the point that we can be able to provide those total green solutions and also the total solution to move up the kind of traffic freeze and green solutions, that we have to have that kind of infrastructures established. That's not something different from what we are talking about. The infrastructures that's what we're talking about is the whole business from this technology standpoint, that we need to have the mobilities in the sense of autonomous vehicles, and also we need to have the non-mobility solution in the sense of, for example, the logistics as a services. I think combining the vehicles, autonomous driving vehicles, and also the logistics or smart mobility together, integrated system, that we can be able to provide kind of infrastructures for business going forward. And that's what my team has been working on. As a matter of fact, that we have been able to provide the vehicles and running the demonstrations every day, not a single day, and figuring out how to commercialize. Really, for the startup company, we need to be able to figure out how to maximize the return on investment. And yet, for that kind of solution, we have to be able to build ecosystems. Very important to, for example, to partner with the public transportation operator, and also establish kind of the networking, 5G networking, shared mobilities, and that's all we've been working with that kind of smart mobility. For example, the smart container trucks, right? That kind of very popular these days. And to me, that kind of ongoing trends is very important on vehicle side, but yet building that kind of infrastructure is really important. And that's why I've been sharing with my students in their class that from a supply chain standpoint, it's good, and yet looking forward, talk about the technology development. What can we do to advance today's supply chain so that we can build that kind of technologies, avoid the kind of disruptions, or well prepared for the presentation, the supply chain business, and how can we be able to build a kind of robust technologies to build a kind of quality and high safeties, and yet overall kind of mobility as a total solution as we prefer. Thank you.
Dr. Hugh, clearly on a regional basis, there's a number of major infrastructure projects going on here with the launch of Project 11 and the Houston Ship Channel, the Port Freeport dredging, and then, hopefully soon we'll see the creation of the Highway 36A freight corridor, which will go from Port Freeport all the way up to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. With that said, what I'm not seeing is, what are we doing for autonomous trucking and freight corridors to get us to Industry 4.0? So, in your autonomous vehicles, what are you doing to ensure quality, reliability, and safety? And then what does the state need to do as a next step to bring in that technology infrastructure?
Absolutely, that's the kind of big scope of discussions. Let me share two main points. First, from the technology itself, for some would say, there were so many high tech is coming, talking about is the infrastructure, new technology, talking about 5G networking, shared networking, and also the autonomous driving vehicles itself, and they're talking about the lidars, radars, cameras, the ultrasound radars. Really, those kind of technologies is good, and yet not good enough. That's why we need to be able to put that kind of fusion technology in the sense of compensate safety concern. For example, in today's kind of autonomous driving business, that kind of perception technology is good, and yet not good enough. For someone to say we're looking at kind of screen when you have a strong sunlight, it's hard to distinguish a kind of green line or red line. Very difficult. So really, having said that, that means we need to build that kind of a smart road constructions, build that kind of infrastructures. So from the state perspective, I would say two things at minimum that promote or accelerating the test of autonomous or the self-driving container trucks. And yet, in the meantime, build a kind of smart port, meaning build a kind of shared, connected kind of a networking systems, meaning from the port itself, then try to provide a kind of automated, the kind of scheduling, dispatching, so that each for somebody, and the way that we've been doing, we try to build that kind of capability through the 5G networking to build all those connections together, building those trucks so that they can share, connect each other. So whenever the kind of situation you talk about, for some road construction challenges, inventory, warehouse, and we can be able to provide the first time the kind of visibilities and connect each other to build that kind of data analysis, to big data analytics, and provide information so that we can be able to provide the first time decision making to drive that one. And on top of technology challenges, in the meantime, that we have been, especially myself, I came from this automotive business agency standpoint, that I see the challenges of quality, reliability, safety. Now, what does that mean? Do we have enough technologies? Yeah, no. Yes, we do, but no, because technology itself meaningless unless you have to be able to infuse it, for some would say. And on top of those infusion, meaning we have to build a kind of sense of robust technologies and product. And let me be more precise. What do I mean about the robust technologies or robustness rather than the jargon? Really, what we are talking about, the robust technology, meaning make your technologies insensitive to those uncontrollable user environment. For example, say the temperatures, hot, cold, foggy, right? Then all kinds of moisture, and talk about customer usage, and talk about the manufacturing piece-to-piece variations, and also more importantly, talk about system interactions, interfaces, challenges. And those areas, that's why I've been able to help my organization to build the kind of technologies, although those technologies not necessarily mature enough, even though now you can challenge in many different ways. Not well, are we perfect? No. Are we improving? Yes, in the sense of what improving. Build a kind of robustness and resilience for the system. That's what we're pushing for. Even though for my teaching, for my students, although they are going out of the school soon, but really from the logistics standpoint, are we sure? Are we trying to get those best suppliers or supplying quality? Yes, we do. So from a traditional standpoint, we have three top main indicators. Number one is the cost, quality, and time. And really those things, to me, from the actual practice standpoint, are necessary minimum. And yet one thing I did impose, and I was working with the OEM, that impose that kind of robustness as a leading indicator for the technology development, for the product development. Having done that, then we can be able to improve significantly the quality, reliability, safety in the upfront design phase, rather than fall back to this the production or supply chain last draw and reactive. And that's what I'm doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hugh. Marco, you and I were involved in an unnamed project over the last year and a half. And Dr. Hugh touched on smart ports. We know the European and Asian ports all use the port community system. There is only one port in the United States that has a PCS system, and that's LA Long Beach. Can you share with us the advantages that European ports have by using the system? For instance, the work that our friends at Hamburg Port Consulting are doing.
Great. So the really great project, what we can say publicly, is that this was a project to the digitization of a major port project, which is very exciting and tapping into the talents of many interesting individuals. But the Europeans, I think, just to preface that we look to Europe in a lot of transportation and technology and innovation. Let me just preface that context before going into the Port Hamburg Consulting and the solution to this big challenge. And again, before I get analytical, I'm a shipping guy. I just move cargo from point A to point B, but I like to read a lot. And what's exciting about Europe is how diversified some of the great maritime traditions, whether it's Holland, UK, Germany, and the Scandinavian countries. If we just touched here in Houston, a lot of the Scandinavians and offshore technologies for the oil and gas industry as an example. I want to emphasize that because there's competition. Not to say that when I did the Master's Transportation MBA at CUNY Maritime, it was actually in a museum, and you see the great American maritime tradition. But we focus on the Navy and the U.S. Navy in terms of that investment, that the great brains. It's not really, these days, we see it in as much as the Europeans have got in that integrated system of different competing ports competing, and they have to be integrated from an EU point of view. I had the pleasure of having the past week John McCown, who's written a book called The Giants of the Sea, and he worked closely with Malcolm McLean. I assume most people in this room know who Malcolm McLean. I have the pleasure of telling the students how containerization was invented here. Now, we've got a lot of foreign names moving container ships, but in 1947, a trucker from South Carolina wanted to find an efficient way of offloading his trucks in Hoboken, New Jersey. It came here to Houston, the Ideal X, with 50 containers. I say that because at that time, that innovation was at 40, it was actually longer, 50 foot. Then 40 foot became the standard. U.S. trucking moved to 45, and usually the dry vans are 53 foot. That innovation continued in the U.S. So basically, 140 needs then one dry van 53 is equivalent to 3 40 foots generally. There's a whole distribution system on California. And getting to your question, the distribution system comes from Asia, offloads a 40-foot container, and then the distribution goes to trucking or intermodal. So there's a gap and there's an opportunity with this disruption to possibly look at, there are companies looking at 53 foot rather than 40 foot for being the standard. That's some of the long-term objective. Something more immediate is technology in just better efficiency. If we look at the chassis, the wheels that need to move the containers, there's a lack of container, and this is all obviously very, very specific to COVID disruption with the blank sailings and where container carriers to meet revenue. I mean, just like the airlines used to do, there's not enough people on the flights canceled. You know, we used to see them have to do that a lot. But technology and having the ports communicate with the truckers don't know when the ships are coming in. They have an entire system, and I'm talking very high level, not getting granular in terms of IT, but the Europeans are doing that. And the European ports have a system in place where there is that active. And you would think here in the States, why aren't we doing that?
Let's switch, thank you, Marco. Let's switch gears real quick and come back to you, Dr. Henson. Tell us, what type of technology are you using to analyze transportation and spatial structures? And say this in a layperson's terms, because I don't think there's any GIS operators in the audience.
So GIS, if you don't know, is a platform that you can store a lot of data in, and you can look at things from a data visualization perspective. You can see what's going on in the lay of the land. So you can take a spreadsheet of where all the gas stations are, addresses, moms and lats. Boom, you can see them on the screen. And you can also pull things out as it relates to roads, transportation, lines, as we spoke about, the 36 project from Freeport. And as I spoke earlier about the lay of the land, if you take a line and draw it along 36 all the way up to Dallas, there's a lot of data and things along that route. A lot of points, a lot of opportunities. There's lane opportunities for potential terminals to kind of help with what's going on now with the transportation piece, as you spoke to the opportunities. So utilizing GIS offers a lot of things. It offers to reduce the margin of error, the human factor. So if the margin of error is really high, technology helps you kind of reduce that, especially as it relates to cost and time. Not so much as quality, Dr. Hugh, but you can look at that too, right? Where you can actually start documenting and putting that into the system. Now, as you were speaking to what's being done in Europe, in this GIS platform, there's an opportunity for students to learn how to integrate systems, even with TMS. There's a lot of things called widgets, dual panes, where you can have both of your technologies on one screen, right? Where you can actually automate it and make them work at the same time. If I spin it around over here, it'll spin over there. Depends on what you want to look at. You create dashboards. They're dashboards that you create. You may have seen that. So the dashboards, you can have everything. Just throw all the data in and have different data visualizations you can automate for live. I'm even looking at now, I haven't talked to Margaret about this, about drones. Actually collecting that data, sending out, getting certifications, pilot.
We need some
Pilot
money.
certification. Oh, that was the last thing, but big as well. You know, we'd love to get some sample data from some of the industries and some funding to purchase data like the data from the Nike data.
Oh, yes.
Right. That data we have to purchase, but when we get this, we can not only utilize it for research, we can also utilize it to in the classrooms, right? To actually use it as sample data and give them real life experiences.
Thank you. We actually have a subscription to Import Genius where we look at bills of lading, and we can do it for companies, for specific products, or even to specific ports, and it's very expensive. And this kind of moves over to Vince. I mean, you've been in procurement for a couple of decades. I mean, with NASA and with HPE, how has technology changed the business model and delivery of products and services? And then how has it been working virtually with your team?
Let me start the second half of that one. I love it. It lets me do things like this during the day, first of all. So it's always a good thing. But before COVID hit, in a few years back, our company had the idea of hire the best person to do the job. Novel idea, I know. No matter where they're at. So that was a great thing because you could put people that knew procurement or any part of the business really, it's just generic. And it was great because we're an IT company, we had the IT tools, we could connect all these people and work 24/7, round the clock, around the globe to do what we needed to do to make things happen for our customers. Sometimes different people come into the company, they decided to change things, and it happened to us as well. And we had a new rule where it's to pull everybody back into an office. We want to consolidate our offices. We want to be in certain locations in certain regions around the world. And the idea here is we want people to collaborate and save costs at the same time. I think we found out with the pandemic that we all can still collaborate. And as you pointed out, you're teaching the students how to do that. It's critical that we all learn how to collaborate. And I think now that we've seen what the pandemic can do, our company's now reversed that decision, and now we're pretty much 80% going to be remote. And so everybody that's at home can stay at home if you so choose. Come to certain offices every now and then. I think a lot of people are going this way. And we have not seen any detriment to our business at all at this point. In fact, customers are very happy because a lot of the people that were coming to visit them, in terms of field engineers or sales reps or anything like that, can now actually be there on a little more regular basis. So it's a very good thing. And so I guess back to the other part of your question, let me kind of connect the two of those together. One of our HPE values that we really push is partnership. And I think that ties into very careful, we carefully try to make sure it ties into collaboration. And we do that through our supplier network as well. And so when we write agreements with our suppliers, it's not just the guys who want to buy widgets off the shelf from. It's who are the best people to partner with to get the best technology in the time frame we need it to meet the strategic goals we have as a company and what our customers really need in the end. So we try to develop agreements with them, with their suppliers as partnerships, not necessarily JVs from a legal sense, but partnerships that allow us to be a little more give and take. If there's a data issue, we share data, right? Without having the worries of losing intellectual property rights. So by us writing this agreement in terms of a partnership, with that in mind, there's a little more freedom that you can do with and to succeed better. I think the last part about delivery, you were saying, is one of the questions you had. I guess one of the greatest technologies that we've been able to put in place is, since we were pushing all of our stuff, what we call out to the edge, right? It's at the customer location. It's just a refrigerator in your house, right? It's full of IT stuff. That's how far out we want our services to go. We're able to provide services out of the edge with people and improve network connectivity. Sometimes we need to replace parts. And the difficulty is making sure those parts get there at the right time and it's the right part. So that our field engineers or the customer can pick it up and do the repairs necessary to get back online. So one of the things we put in place, Amazon has these all over the place. The Amazon lockers, you can get deliveries to those instead of coming to your house. We've instilled the technology of our smart spares boxes at various locations out in the field, not necessarily at a customer location, but somewhere that's co-located around multiple customers. The speeds of delivery of products, and ensures that we get the right product at the right time to where it needs to go and speed up the repair operations. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Last question, and Dr. Hugh, you only have a minute, and I'm timing you. Okay, so, I mentioned that we've seen a number of large companies from California relocate, including Hewlett-Packard Enterprises, Oracle, and Tesla. If Silicon Valley ends with social media, what is the future of Texas in terms of industrial innovation? This is right up your alley.
Wow, thank you. That's a very big question. Well, in terms of technologies, innovation, I would say start with that kind of improvements of supply chain business, implementing that kind of like what we shared, the infrastructure, small infrastructure is infrastructure establishment, and also the necessary testing of autonomous container truck establishment, and also the supply chain 4.0 go along with the industrial 4.0 smart manufacturing. That's a huge business for Texas, especially for Houston area, and also great for the our communities and also for the students who will be graduating from the University of Houston. Thank you.
Oh, I think we have one question, it looks like.
Maybe more of a comment. My husband is Dr. Dale Thibodeau, professor at the
Oh,
University of
yes,
Houston,
at Bauer,
Bauer
yes.
School of Business, Supply Chain Outreach. And I wanted, I'm so jazzed by what I heard today and what I hear every night of what he comes home with. And I wanted to make sure that the people in the audience knew that for a very small amount of money, they have practice problems that you can give to, one of the tough problems that you're trying to crack, and have the students try to crack those problems for you. And one of the ones that I was just very energized by is the whole process of getting water to the Permian Basin and recycling that water. And the solutions that his students, sorry if I say kids, that his students came up with, were really just very exciting. And so I just wanted to let you know that there's ways for you to connect, because this whole program is about trying to connect education and business. And there are, if you have real world problems, you can bring those through and they can make a practice problem out of them and use that as basically a core assignment. And it's I thought that the innovation that the students have shown has just been truly outstanding. So it's just another shine on what you're doing, Dr.
I want to thank Laura. I forgot to bring that up. I teach practicum, which is our capstone course, as does Dr. Henson and Professor Poisler. And we depend on our industry partners to work with us. And during COVID, it's been really tricky. I have teams working with KDR and Bechtel, and each organization may have 3 to 5 executives where the students, whether it's every week or every other week, will have a call because they're not going face to face. But these executives give the students a problem to solve, and then the students have to, do the research and present a viable solution. And they're graded not only by myself, but they're peer reviewed, and they're also graded by the industry partner. And so this is a critical component, and it's part of our accreditation as a program to have these partnerships. So I hope some of you might consider reaching out to myself or Dr. Henson, and we'd certainly love to ascertain potential projects.
Yes.
Tim, thank you for hosting us.
Yeah, excellent program, by the way. I highly recommend it. And I just have one question, if I can sneak it in yet. The autonomous vehicle trucking, okay? So why can't we run autonomous trucks between Houston and Dallas between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. right now? And why can't we do it from Savannah the same way up I-85 right now? Because I can't hear it. One reason, and I apologize if somebody's in the room from BNSF. The only thing I know is BNFS protects the rail linkage from Long Beach into Dallas-Fort Worth. They have a rail yard in Houston, and they do not use a lot of it for intermodal. It's all protecting that line. So why not jam the darn autonomous trucks now? And I don't know why we can't take a lane, shut down a lane, going up 45 between 1 and 5 a.m. I can't come up with one reason.
A freight corridor.
Team, you make a
Between
case.
1 and 5. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, is the right comment. It's the matter of how we translate that kind of thinking, ideas into strategies and into execution. Let me share with you why I'm saying that. that kind of question has been a long time, not only you, but a couple of folks out there. Do we have technology to do that? Yes, we do. Do we want to do that? Yes, we want to do that. But do we have a budget? Do we have a plan? And that's the point I'm trying to make is that it doesn't matter you are ready or not. The technologies keep moving, keep changing. We have to embrace the change, make it happening. I had a project when I was in Shenzhen, China, moving the kind of buses between the custom between Hong Kong and China. It's very expensive. You can make a lot of money, but just don't want to do it. There are a lot of red tapes out there.
What about regulatory barriers?
Absolutely, there were many things that need to be concerned. I mean, there's nothing perfect, but the point that we can make it happen and then improving perfectly later on. I mean, that's the point that I was sharing with Margaret, that it's a time for us to improve the supply chain business and systems to prevent that kind of disruption like COVID-19. So that's absolutely a disaster. And also, what can we do? How can we do? Why don't we embrace those opportunities and challenges, leveraging those new technologies? Trucks, goods ready. Are we perfect? No.
Well, to that point, Mark, I can probably attest to this. Freight forwarders probably know every acronym in the government directory. It's one of the most heavily regulated industries, probably next to the nuclear industry.
Well, I mean, absolutely true. I mean, that's cannot argue with that. All these regulatory requirements, all kind of compliance, absolutely necessary. And yet, you look at this history, you look at the kind of evolving, especially during this pandemic period, the things happening in China, they promoting by no means perfect compared with the United States. I don't think there's a way better than the United States, but from the implementation, for example, say like Tim's idea, that we put idea, is it feasible? Yes. Can we move on? Yes. Are we perfect? No. How can we secure, for example, safety from the operational standpoint, rather than from technical standpoint? Nothing's perfect. If you wait for perfect, nothing for waiting for you. You are out. In China, half a year you don't make things happen, you're out. That's a challenge.
Can I add that? Sure. So you mentioned regulatory things. I think the government hurdle is a big one, right? We've got to, but lobbying can happen. Lobbyists, they can make things happen. I think the public trust is the next barrier as well. Even if it is the middle of the night, no one's going to know what you're actually moving, but maybe that's the problem. They don't know enough about it. So it's education to the public and the safety concerns. We just have to tell everybody why it's okay. You can have it. I will tell you that can't tell you any details about it, but there are some things that many different companies are engaged with, universities engaged with, industry as a whole, in the development of consortium to push exactly what you guys are asking. It's in the process. So hopefully more to talk about that next time.
We would be happy to connect you with some of those people privately.
Be happy to do it.
Margaret maybe will say we will be very happy to get engaged with the committee, steering committee to put things together.
But I think we have another panel and we've
Oh, we
run
might
over
have
our
one.
time.
And I heard about it, I think it's blockchain. Anyway, okay, so the excuse I'm using is I didn't find out about you coming until late. Weren't you cut? Yeah, I think you were the last 2 days ago. And I don't have an engraving company, so I could pull it off, so I apologize. Marco, Project Cargo Executive of the Year. Al, I think you proved your point. Thought Leader of the Year.
Oh,
And you might have noticed that the ladies get much better.
It's about time, right?
Margaret Kidd, Global Supply Chain Technology, Logistics Technology and Leader of the Year.
Oh,
Thank you.